Hi, Victor. Good evening. How are
Hello,
you?
George. I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I am good too. I am good too. Uh,
Yes.
um, so it's been quite a long time that we've had one of these
Yes.
conversations. So today, again, we've taken time, and I think,
Yes, and
uh,
we are hoping that will continue this. I mean, one every week we'll do
yes,
that from now. That's yeah.
true, true. So for today's discussion, sorry, what I had in mind was something which affects every student, right? We tend to see them maybe end of a term or end of a semester. My time it used to be end of the year, right? Which is attendance, right? So attendance, and somewhere maybe if we also decide to talk about exams and our philosophies about the exams and evaluation per se, right? Not just exams, but evaluation. But to start off, let's start the discussion in terms of attendance. What's your view as now a faculty member and previously as a student? What was your perspective on attendance?
Okay. Uh, I guess this is a very important topic, and I guess this is a debate that's being right now. I mean, this is being discussed now in academic circles about attendance. I mean, that requirement to impose this attendance policy on students. In most universities, there is sort of 75% attendance that we have. In some places, there's 85 as well. So mostly there is some sort of attendance policy wherein if a student does not have, say for example, 75% attendance, he or she would not be allowed to appear for the exams, right? That's usually the policy that is being there. Now obviously every university imposes that in a different way. Some universities tend to be soft on it, some universities tend to be very hard on it. So that's it. But the larger question is, should we have this policy at the very first place? I mean, especially in universities. I mean, when you talk of universities, we are dealing with with a population which, in a way, I mean, is in their late teens and early 20s, right? Of course, I mean, the postgraduate level, they might be on the higher side, but at least at the undergrad level, we are talking people who are in the late teens and early 20s, right? Now, at that stage, at this age, when they are about to step out in the world and we would like them to be responsible, should we not start treating them as responsible individuals right in our campuses, right in our classrooms, right? And not having an attendance policy in a way tells them that, you know what, we trust that you will be coming to the class. We trust you that you will take advantage of the education that is being imparted to you, right? So that's a responsibility that we have because we are trusting on you in this. That's one aspect. I mean, that's one side of the argument. The other side of the argument is, which many academicians tend to put forth, is these are again people who are in their late teens and early 20s. Now, this is the age where they're exposed to the outside world, the good, bad, ugly, everything, right? And in this age, people tend to go haywire. And I mean, and that it has merit in this. I mean, the drug culture you talk of and different other activities or habits that people tend to take up. This is the age, it's that very tender age where people tend to take up those habits. So in that age, yes, we want them to be responsible, but also we cannot have or entrust them with absolute personal liberty. There has to be some checks and balances. And attendance in that perspective is that check and balance, at least. So the argument is that if we have some sort of attendance policy, they will at least turn up in the class. Now, if they turn up in the class, maybe out of the 2 hours or 1.5 hour, whatever the duration of the class is, they may not listen to everything that the faculty or the teacher, professor is saying, but they'll at least learn something out of it. Okay, at least in those moments, in those in that time frame, they will be interacting with their peers, right? For example, there's a discussion that's going on, but they will have that opportunity to talk about it, to share their perspective. Maybe not be in every class, but in some class they will learn something from it. So the very aspect that they are being forced to come in the class will add some value to it. Okay, so I guess that's two sides of the argument that I understand that's there. I feel I'm slightly in between. Okay, maybe I'll share that in a moment. But before that, I want to understand from you, what do you think of these two sides of the argument, or do you have any other perspective on this?
Okay, the way I look at it is, at least for at the undergrad level, there are these kids who are coming from the schooling system, and the Indian schooling system is not something which is very laissez-faire, right? It is something which is driven by discipline. It is something which is driven by an identification with rules and regulations and strict compliance with all of those things, right? So coming from a world like that, where attendance is taken once in the morning, right, and you are expected to be there attending all the classes throughout the rest of the day, right? There's no exception to that. Now they come into this sort of a system where they are going from classroom to classroom, right? So, and they have a little time in between, they have free time, they have access to all day canteens and things like that. Right? So, suddenly kids tend to have that sudden feeling of freedom. And it is at that time that most people get uh, sort of uh, disillusioned, right? When you suddenly release the chains, there's that tendency to go overboard, right? And that is, I think, the biggest problem. As far as things like drug problems and other things are concerned, I think that is more personal. It's not somewhere, I mean, the neither the attendance policy nor any other policy would be able to control that too much for any institution, because that is more gullibility, more maybe peer pressure, more of the non-classroom aspects. But from what I feel, attendance and being present in the class is somewhere, I mean, for a lot of students, it is also breaking away from the shackles, right? For them, it is that rebelliousness of youth which they're able to show by saying that, okay, now since it is my choice, I will not attend, and if I don't like a subject, then I will not attend that class, right? So, in some way, they're making their statements. So while I feel that, I mean, at the postgraduate level, I think attendance is does not make any sense, because you cannot hold postgraduates to the same standards that you hold school children to, or undergraduates. At the undergraduate level, somewhere attendance, I agree with you, might be required to have people there in the class, so that at least there is something which they're absorbing out of that um, 1.5 hour session, whatever is the duration. There again comes the question of, do we want them to just understand some part? Is that enough? Is that part of the, I mean, is that serving the educational purpose of the entire degree? Right? There are multiple places where the Indian education system has been criticized for its lack of skills ready form of education, right? So we are not even training them for skills. And on top of that, when we are training them theoretically, if they're not paying attention, then how do you make sure that the output from the education is complete? Right. So just my initial views on that.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. So, just a part on the maybe I did not communicate properly. So, for example, about the thing about the drug and the thing that you've been talking about. So, the argument more that is made is these kids at this age, they tend to get into all of those, and it just shows that they're not responsible enough for themselves, right? So, if we don't put some checks and balances, right, then they would go completely out of hand and they would not get the education that they're supposed to get. So attendance in a way is just to put the check and balance. It will no way address that aspect of the drugs and all of those things, but at least about the when it comes to the education that they should get, that they will be slightly forced to take it. So I mean, that was this one.
Agreed.
But I
Agreed.
guess I get a point. At the postgraduate level, yes. Now at the postgraduate level, I guess students tend to be more responsible. Why? Mostly they come after experience if it's a professional course. If not, they're still, I guess, they're in 2023. I mean, some people may have had a gap year after graduation. Even if they have come after graduation, the maturity level is slightly on the higher side. They understand the importance of a career, right? So as to build a career for themselves. They are exposed to much more realities of the world. Their friends mostly have gone to different career paths, so they are aware. I mean, at a graduation level, mostly the peers transition from school to college. The only
Together.
difference is which college has someone gone into. That's the only difference, right? But in the postgraduate level, everyone now from college has transitioned to different things. Some have gone for higher education, some have gone for jobs, different kind of jobs, different kind of higher education courses, professional courses, a lot of things, right? So the exposure is much more, and there, uh, I mean, obviously, this thing of social validation also kicks in much harder at the postgraduate level. So mostly, I guess, mostly I resonate with you that at postgraduate level, people tend to be more responsible in that. I mean, at that age, if they are not responsible, I think as society, there's no point in even interfering that. That's okay. I mean, there we can't do much about it. Uh, at the undergrad level, what I think is, and that's where I would like to bring in my understanding, my perspective on this. If we just talk about India, okay, I mean, and perhaps this can be generalized for the world overall, for different economies as well. Even at the undergrad education that you get, there are different levels of colleges and universities, right? The very aspect of getting admission to the prestigious ones, the process is different. I mean, you talk about DU, you talk about the IITs, you talk of the AIMS, right? The very aspect that someone has got admission into this universities and colleges is an entire exercise in themselves. I mean, it's a memorable exercise that every student who comes out of those institutions, when they go back, these are stories that they say that this many hours of preparation we had done. This is how we got it, because this is something that they have earned it for those institutions. Now, what I think is, when students of that caliber, not just caliber, students of that commitment, who have really earned that place, once they get into those campuses, for them, the way they look at education becomes slightly different as compared to the students who have gone into universities which are perhaps good, equally good, but the admission may not have been that competitive. And there are a lot of universities around there. I mean, it's just hardly the 0.5% of the universities in India which would be that competitive, or perhaps even less. But getting admission to them and vis-a-vis the others is not same. Okay. Now, what I'm trying to say is that there's a sense of earning the spot, the seat. Okay. The students at that level, their understanding of the value that they would impart to an education of that sort is different. The very aspect that they have tried so hard and have succeeded in getting admission, for example, in EDU, okay, say Stephens or the Hindu college, the very aspect that they've tried so hard to get admission there, it shows that the tenacity that they have. It shows that they're serious about their career, and that's the reason they had gone. Because otherwise, they could have gone to any other place. They did not have to work so hard. I mean, people who get into the IITs, the top spots. The very aspect that shows that they think education is important for them to succeed in life. With this mindset, when they get to the classroom, okay, I'm pretty sure, I mean, at least what I observe is that they understand their maturity is also very different, and they take education in a very different way. One classic example here I'd bring is the example of BITS. Okay, so BITS does not have any attendance policy. I mean, you can afford not to attend classes throughout the semester. You will be allowed to give exam, not an issue. So the way faculty there enforces attendance policies through surprise quizzes and through different assignments. I mean, you would not know when a quiz would be taken, and if you miss a quiz, it's done, right? So that's how students. So there's a sense of contemplation. Okay, when the next quiz can be taken, how much those things, the calculations go on. But what I have observed since I've come from that system is when students are not in the class, it's not that they roam around in the canteens and do this. I mean, of course they do. It's not that they don't do, but they're also doing something constructive, right? Either they're working on their startups, right, or they're coding at the places, or they're visiting different other places for competitions and different things. So it's about the ambience, it's about the ecosystem, the campus as the environment where students automatically get into something, some club activities, something, some events. There's always some event that's happening out there. So now the point is, what I'm trying to say is that that is a system where students have really earned their place. Okay, and when they've earned their place, they think, okay, when I go to, they make that calculation. Yes, going to class is important, but do I need to attend all the classes? How many classes can I miss to afford, and how do I cover it up? There's internet, there batchmates will tell them what is going on. But in that other time, extra time, what else am I going to do? So if you see any BITSC and CV, there are a lot of extracurricular activities that is there. Right? It's pretty similar. I mean, there's the similar experiences for other universities, I'm sure. But since I have come from that system, I've seen that that's a very specific to BITSC culture or BITSC system, that they do a lot of extracurricular activities. Okay, now in that system, since they have been entrusted with that trust, I mean they have given the system trusts them to do something valuable, they actually end up doing. Okay, and how do we know that they have done well throughout this 4 or 5 years? Because BITS has this dual degree program as well. Someone can do an engineering plus a master's in economics or maths or something like that, is in the interview, right? In the recruitment on campus. If they did not have adequate skills, they would not have got the placement, that the kind of figures that they get, right? Because there it's not about marks, it's about skills. And if you're not good in coding, I mean, I know 5 pointers in bits who have got extraordinary packages. I mean, at that level, 20, 30 LPS. 5 pointers have got that. Why? Because they have developed the skills. Academically, they are not sound. That's okay, but they have got that. So, and I'm sure I'm saying I'm just talking about this system is because I know about this system. So, in a system like this where people have really earned their place, I think attendance might not be necessary. I mean, a compulsory attendance policy might not be that necessary. That's one aspect that I see it. But in many other places where the student crowd, the crowd is not that serious, okay, where they're just there because they want to get into a college, or, I mean, they want this education, there we might not be able to expect the same level of maturity. In those
Okay.
places, what I think is that some sort of checks and balances is important. Now, whether it should be 75, it should be 65, 85, 95, it's a different, I mean, that's a different argument or debate altogether. But I think there should be some sort of checks and balances. We cannot allow them to go. I mean, even if we allow them, but we should have some track of what they're doing. Okay. So I think that attendance policy uh, is helpful in such kind of institutions. So in the bottom line that I'm trying to the point that I'm trying to drive is it's really about the institution, what kind of students get into, right? What is the how they have earned their place there, and based on that, the attendance policy has to be there. I mean, this is what I think for elite institutions where students have really earned their place. I mean, the very aspect that you have someone has earned a place just shows the seriousness. It's as simple as that. I mean, otherwise, I mean, getting into IIT JEE, getting into IIT Bombay, say computer science, just shows the amount of work that that person has done, right? It shows that he or she is very serious about the studies. I mean, about career. As simple as that. So I don't need to put them under restriction. Ki you will I don't need to force that person. I mean, it's there. It's already there. That's the reason they have been able to get into that classroom, or else they would not have been able to get. Right. So I mean, it depends on
So,
institution to institution. That's my perspective. No, totally up to you.
okay.
Now, over to
So
you.
let me now put a little spanner in there, right? So what, while I agree with you, and that's fairly ideal case scenario also, think of it, a person who spent the past 2 years not going for a vacation, not doing almost anything else. I mean, anyone who is preparing for a BTech program would be aiming for JEE and therefore working day and night to get into JEE. You don't get through an IIT. Maybe you get through some other place, or even if you get through an IIT, there is a sense of fatigue that those people would be facing, right? And they would be like, yeah, बहुत हो गया. We've done so much. Now it's time to break out, break free, break through. Right? We've broken through. Now we need to enjoy also on this part, on this side of the world. So therefore, that while that internal motivation is something that drove them, does that internal motivation also transcend that admission process and come on to the other side equally? Uh, if it does, then I think attendance is not required. I have a slightly different view. I'll come from I'll state an example which I heard some editor quote for journal articles, citing other journal articles, right? And I'll build from there, right? So not other journal articles, authors citing articles from their own journal, right? From the journal that you're pitching to. Why do you need to cite articles from that journal also? So the justification that someone gave, which sounded sensible and logical to me, was that a journal is actually a conversation. Think of the journal as a conversation, right? Now, there are these bits of conversations that other people have had in that room, right? Now, when you are entering into the conversation, do you bring in I mean, do you contribute to the conversation by talking everything which is alien to that room, to that conversation, or do you bring in snippets from that conversation, right? And an interesting conversation is usually one where there are snippets which are coming from that conversation, right? Now, why did I bring this in? To say that a program, right, is is successful when you've got contributions or when you've got the flavor of that program coming in, right? And how do people get that flavor of that program? I mean, of an institution, right? So it could be any institution, need not only be the elite institutions, but then there are some other institutions which might not be typically referred to as elite, but then they have a certain culture. And how does that culture get brought about, or how do students come into that culture? By being present, right? And being present is in some ways quantified by attendance, right? So getting people into the class, into the campus, getting them to be there and um, be part of the entire conversation that is happening at that institution's level. Somewhere, I feel that that is required to maintain the continuity of what that institution stands for. Right? And it need not be at of any particular institution, right? All institutions have their own, and they also develop that conversation. So somehow, I feel it is not such a big problem in residential campuses, right? When you have non-residential programs, that becomes a bigger issue because there you, I mean, what is the you need to have a very high level of motivation for the students to actually get up in the morning, travel, plan for the day and travel, come to campus, attend whatever, and then plan for the travel back. Right? And then the evening starts only after that. Right? So the level of motivation becomes needs to be much higher in sort of residential programs. I think their motivation, I mean, internal motivation is not the issue. It is more no, I mean, externally you are given a very what conducive system, but then it is just uh, a lack of drive, right? It is not even motivation. I think it is more in terms of drive, right? Just pure laziness that you do not get into a classroom unless you're forced to participate in the classroom and perform in the classroom, right? I mean, the faculty going into the classroom needs goes with the mindset that okay, I have to perform in the classroom. A student coming in can always be a passive student, right? And if you're staying on campus and still not doing that, then I think it is more a lack of drive than anything else because motivation is not required here, right? You're already there, you're not doing anything else, and most students do not have what any other form of entertainment other than maybe their mobiles, right? If they stay back in their hostel rooms. So I mean, just my perspective about why attendance would be important in some ways. So while I am fairly comfortable in people not attending if that is their choice. But then I feel somewhere then they're not earning that degree. That you don't earn um, that tag of being wherever you want to be an alumni of.
Yes. So, okay. So you say that, I mean, if I understand correctly, that if there's a residential program and if students are not getting into the class, just is there lack of drive, right? Uh, I agree. I agree. But then my question to you here is, what if the students think that The same information that will be imparted in the class, I can get it from the comfort of my bed inside the hostel room through this through this entire this revolution of internet. I mean, I just have a laptop and I can get it, and I don't need to get into the classroom. In that case, it may not be sheer motivation, right? So, I mean, how would you counter that if that's the argument that is put forth?
In fact, that is one conversation I put front and center for all my classes, whether it be undergrad, postgrad, whatever level, any place get the chance, I bring this up and I address the fear that some people had over time that would education turn online, and is there uh, future um, in the college education and the physical infrastructure based education that we've been so used to. I keep telling people about the fact that when a lot of these videos are watched, like, and I've also had personal experience of those, you watch a video, you absorb everything just like a sponge, right? Because they simplify everything, and within a short span of time, and in very specific order, clear, crisp order, they're able to present the facts to you, right? So it is very easy for the viewer to absorb and understand the concept, just like a sponge easily absorbs the water. But then I tell them, what happens when you um, subject that sponge to a stress, right? You squeeze the sponge, all the water flows out, right? And then in the case of education, it is just that stress can be as simple as the pure passage of time. You watch a video, you'll understand the concept very well for that day, for that time. 3 days later, if you haven't interacted with that content again, right? Interacted is not just watching that video. Interacted with that content could be you discussed that with someone, you answered some questions, you've done some sort of um, additional activity on that content. If you do not do that, um, within the first 2 3 days, then by the third fourth day the amount that you would retain goes down drastically, right? Which is not the case in something that gets that you are subjected to in classroom, because in a classroom there is a long drawn out conversation that happens around topics, and there are other people's perspectives which are coming in at that time. You might also start thinking that you're not able to do anything else. You are rarely able to multitask in a classroom, right? Because your attention is there in the classroom, you're more or less captive, and even if you're not paying attention, because subconsciously some things are getting registered, your retention is much higher when you're physically in a classroom. Therefore, looking at this, I feel fairly confident that I would have a job going forward
Okay.
in a
So,
physical system.
okay. So I get that. Now, what I think is, uh, okay, so so for example, I'll just take just as my example. So if I think, okay, just not to put anyone else, I'm just putting myself down in the on the spot under the spot. Say I think if I go to the classroom, I learn this thing, but it will take me one entire session or two entire sessions, right? And there are other things also that's going to happen. But I can get this information in 10 minutes watching a video. Okay. Now, yes, I need to retain it. I'll practice it. I'm serious. I have to learn it. I need to deliver it for exam. Okay. Now, for a student like me, right, who thinks that I have it in me to learn it by myself and there's enough resources available, I don't need to spend 2 hours for this. I can learn this in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I can do a lot of other things. Okay. So for that student, why do you need to make my attendance compulsory? Okay, that's my first question. That's one. Second, the second aspect is this student, this exact student like me, what the example that I've given, the the point is not every student is like this. Okay, there maybe those like out of 100, I'm saying like there are say 8 or 10 students like this. 10% are like this. Absolutely okay for them. I totally understand. But are the rest of the 90% or say 80% of the students like this? When we make a system for the masses. right? We have to, and in that masses, and that's the reason every system is not suitable for everyone, because there's always something that does not suit me or suit you, but it has to be made for everyone, right? So that everyone can be accommodated in some way, right? There should be something for everyone in this system. So the education system has also been made like this. uh, so that's the reason I'm saying, for the elite institutions where students have earned their place, can we afford to take away the attendance policy or make it much lower? But in compensation of that, or as a compensatory method, how do we still ensure that the students are still learning? I mean, suppose I take away the attendance policy from a top institution. Now students are free to be anywhere, right? Now, but then my job as an education institution is not just to ensure that students are in the classroom. My job is to ensure that they are being imparted with the right education and skills, whatever I'm intending to impart them. There, I think what you can do is, if you're taking away the education, the attendance policy, there should be frequent exams, for example, right? Or some other exercise, just to ensure that whatever is being taught in the class or is part of the curriculum, students learn it. Now, how do they learn it is totally their choice. They can learn it from anywhere. We don't mind. But as a faculty, I think my job is to ensure that I am a facilitator for the students, right? And by facilitator, I mean, yes, I will be teaching the concept. That's fine. Whoever is interested, you can be there. But if you're not interested, absolutely fine. At the end, it is I my job is also to ensure that you have learned. I don't care how you're learning it, right? Then through exams, through exercises, and through different methods, I'll be grading everyone based on the knowledge and the skill they've acquired, right? Now, so I mean, as a faculty, that's my role. And I think increasingly as faculty members, as we go ahead, our job is going to be more like a facilitator. Okay, so in those institutions, it's fine, right? But in institutions where this system may not work, students are just not committed enough. I mean, if you take away the attendance policy, they'll misuse it. Okay, and there I think it's more necessary that you need to impose it. That's the second aspect that I'm trying to bring. I'll just bring in a small parallel, not directly related to the attendance policy, but also for the online learning thing that you just brought in. In fact, this is something that I talked in my class as well. What I think is the reason why uh, online education seems to be more effective for many students is because, see, the classroom is something when you go, most of the time students don't know what you're going to teach. They might know the topic, they might know the subject, that's okay, but they really don't know the content of it. So they sit there and we impart that. If they like it, if we are good enough to engage them, they'll learn it, they'll enjoy it and go. And the online system is the students who are actually searching for the topic, right? So the curiosity is much more, the hunger is much more, right? If there's a concept, the students hears that in the classroom or sees that in the textbook, and perhaps he or she has missed the class or did not understand the class, they go to search for it, get the topic, and they learn it because there's clear intention that I'm going to learn this topic, so the effectiveness goes up. Okay, so that's how the online education, I mean, in a way is more effective. But when it comes to a structured curriculum, when it comes to the breadth of it, the problem solving part of it, there I think classroom education becomes much more necessary. That's one. Second, also to ensure whether a student has actually learned or not. Okay, and where the problem is, there the faculty's role as a facilitator inside the classroom becomes even more important. And online education can give you a test and it can tell you this is the grade that you got. But if you have got, say, out of 100, if you have got, say, 40 or 50, the online education does not have much more checks and balances to ensure that you reach to 80. I mean, even if they try to impart more cases, the student will have the choice not to even enroll in that, right?
Mm.
But inside in the classroom, I, as a facilitator, as a faculty member, I can impose that. If you have got 40 out of 100, right, and you're not coming to class, right, I can impose that. You know what? You will have to get to 70 or 80 or above. And for that, maybe these are new things you have to do. I mean, you have to now come to the class or you have to learn this. I'll take another test, those things, right? So here I'm more of a facilitator, right? Well, I think faculty members or education institutions should think that of them.
Um,
So I say no. So basically, I was saying that our role is more as a facilitator. That's there, right? And this attendance policy, if it's there, is there, fine. For many institutions required. For if there's an institution which does not require, for example, bench, what they do is they take a lot of surprise quizzes. Okay, so the ultimate goal is to ensure that the students have got the right education before they move out. Okay, and
True.
if we have serious students and committed students who learn in whatever way they possible, at the end they're delivering the results. I think I'm fine with it. Your take.
Okay. So for me, I'd say that's like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? It's having all committed students is an impossibility, right? So we aim for
It
that,
is.
but then I don't think even the at MIT or IITs in India or any other institution, you would find all students to be 100% committed, and somehow that's where that I mean, if we do have that, then ideally yes, one should not have attendance, just like you have it, you have at bits. At DU there is an attendance policy, and for at Stevens we've had quite a few well-known names being held back because they did not have attendance. And there were players, I mean, there were people who were representing India in sports
Mm,
out playing international matches, but then because they did not have attendance, they were not allowed
mm,
to give the exams. And the justification was that you are going to walk out with a degree of Delhi University, St. Stephen's College, but then you haven't spent that time, you haven't ever
mm.
got the influence that this is supposed to have on your life, right, at this life stage. So I I feel that it is an open debate. You it is also somewhere the freedom, sorry, the freedom of the instructor, right? That if there are some students who are creatively engaged and constructively engaged, actually, then the instructor should have the freedom of saying, okay, you've come or you've informed me that you will not be attending this class, and I understand you do not need to attend this class. There are some people who need to attend. I want them to be in the class. Those who do not need to be in the class, I do not want you to waste your time sitting in the class, right? So somewhere I think education also needs to be more efficient, but then
Yes.
efficiency comes in the online mode. That needs to be combined with the personality building form of offline education also. So somewhere we need to find a sweet path between all of these, and or something that actually picks up um, bits and pieces of these. There are systems which are
So
trying to do that, but I think they're overshooting. Then they're picking
yes.
up all the negative parts.
True.
Right. You
I'm
had
just I'm
something.
just throwing out idea out here, and what do you think? Let me know what you think on this. Say suppose um, drawing on the same line. Suppose this, so for example, this is a semester of say 4 months or 5 months. Okay, 5 months semester. Now in this, say we start with this. We start the semester with this policy that attendance is not compulsory. Okay, and we'll check that for 1.5 months. Right, for the first 1.5 months, we are not saying attendance is not compulsory. It's up to the students to come in the class or not come in the class. Right. After this 1.5 months, we are going to take an assessment, which is going to be very difficult. Definitely very challenging in terms of whatever has been taught in the class should be on the higher side. In that assessment, if we find students doing well, right, those, and there should be a pass, suppose 80% or something, right, those students can continue to not compulsorily come to the class, right, but for the rest of them the attendance policy kicks in, right. So the idea is that in the first 1.5 months is totally your choice, right. If the point is you have to learn, okay, if you're learning, we are okay with it, right? With facilitators, we'll be testing whether we're getting it, right? That's one. Second, again, after 1.5 months, again, there's to be another assessment, right? Even in that assessment, those who are scoring above 80%, they can have that freedom. They're absolutely okay. They've earned that freedom. Ultimately, they're learning it. Those who did not, for them, that attendance policy kicks in from there, right? So there, I think the both sort of checks and balances are being kept, because ultimately I need my students to learn however they're learning, and that's why I think online is a complementary thing rather than a competition, right? So
True.
this is something I'm just throwing up. What do you think of this? This one?
I
I am aware this can work much better in technical education, right? Where you can make. I mean, in a more liberal arts sort of curriculum, students can still have their ideas and they write and they get marks. But even in that case, the quality of ideas will be there. I mean, what kind of
true.
references they are able to draw? Are they saying something just generic, or are they drawing more references? That also gives them,
True.
gives the faculty enough. parameters to check upon. So, what do you
So,
think of this idea?
so I find this very interesting, though. I mean, when you started saying it, I had my reservation thinking that if you start what with a lenient attitude, then people tend to take that as the base, and then they later on, when you try to impose attendance, they'll protest and they will actually feel that their independence is being taken away. So I was thinking more in terms of have a strict attendance policy and then maybe give leeway. But I think what you're saying makes a little more sense when you expanded on it, that let them have that freedom. If they're able to perform, then that means they are internally motivated, right? You're in a way then not actually measuring learning, but you're assessing motivation more so, right? If they're internally motivated and they take that action, I think they should be given that freedom. But if they're not able to, and if they're not able to balance the requirements, then here the entire assessment becomes very important, right? That you should be able to assess for the right things, right?
Yes.
So that I think, I mean, it's a very interesting concept. I would say doing it multiple times might be difficult for faculty to implement, but at least,
Logistically, it
yeah,
might be quite challenging.
true,
Logistically, it might be
true.
very challenging and getting the assessments. But I think this is something that can be considered, especially for, I think, the more elite institutions, sort of. I think that's something that can be. And why I also think of this is because, see, a lot of people are already have they have already started a career in their colleges, right?
Mhm.
Not everyone is doing a startup, I understand, but
True.
they're also doing other kind of freelancing work and everything, and they're building their skills. They're trying to, for example, they're in this program of, say, engineering, but they want to build a career in animation, and they're learning the
Mhm.
skill. Not necessarily that
True.
person would get into what do you call build their own company. Because I have a junior from NIT who is who has built a career in design. Okay, he was doing a civil engineering, but then he was building his skills in design. He was doing a lot of courses now. I think right now he's based out of Europe and he's in a top research, design firm, right? And the kind of work that I see sometimes that he posts on social media is top notch. I mean, I just can't imagine the way, the kind of design that he puts in. But then he has worked through that, right? Now, if a student like this has a flexibility to do what he or she desires for, I think it's a win-win situation for all. Yes, for the education institution, it's a logistical challenge for the faculty members, of course. But I guess as we move ahead, we need to look at ourselves more as facilitators rather than the only source of
Sorry.
education. What I think is,
True.
and if we can do that, our resources really widen up, right? As facilitators, sometimes we can also refer to material which is there outside, which perhaps does a much better job than we will
True.
do. Say we'll take 2 hours to do that, they're doing it in half an hour. Why not, right? And after looking at that material, maybe we can then start a discussion in the class. Now you explain what you
Exactly.
think. If there's a problem, then I'll do that, right? I think there, as a facilitator, I think we should use those resources more, and I think our role is going to be much more effective,
True.
as I say. I mean, that's what my perspective is.
I totally agree with that, and I already do that. So that's why that sudden smile came on my face that yes,
Okay.
it is actually that way. One thought, maybe somewhere towards we could take it as a concluding thought or whatever,
Yeah.
is also that our our education system, because of the vast population, the limited number of seats, etc., is also is not a system which is actually based on choice. Right? There are people who want to do uh, IT or computer engineering, but because they got through a good institution for civil engineering, they will enroll for civil engineering, do that entire civil engineering course, but then their entire focus and the intention of where they'd want to get a job would be for a IT firm, right? So therefore, if we have that also, I mean, now I'm just saying that we go maybe another 1,000 feet up and look at the system. Right now, we've got another concern to worry about, which is courses are not of their choice. Right, a lot of people do not get the courses of their choice. Therefore, they're doing a choice out of compulsion than choice. Right now, in this system, how much should the attendance be imposed on them? What you're
Yeah.
saying, if they're able to manage that and with manage the learning that they've enrolled for with that free ticket, that if you are able to manage the learning for this, then you have your free time otherwise to do what you want to do, or you
Mhm.
what you wanted to do, right, of your choice, then I think the system would be a lot more effective.
Yes, yes. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe conclude with this. What I also think, exactly drawing on your point, right now, some of the complaints that students tend to have is that, so we are in this course and you just don't have interest in this, but you're forced to study. Okay. So on the side, they're doing a lot of other things which they like, and as a result, their grades are suffering. Okay. And they
Mm,
just show that because we didn't like it, and so we got, and somehow we have normalized this in our system right now. Or rather, we empathize with it, and it's okay. What I think, if we can make that this system, we were just mentioning that first 1.5 months you check that and you do that. What the impetus that will be there for them is, see, you have enrolled in this course, and whatever you, any course, does not go in vain, even if you go for a completely different career, right? I mean,
mm,
just look at um, sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the Christopher Nolan. Okay, the kind of movies that he does. If I'm not wrong, I think he's an English graduate. If I'm not wrong, but not an engineer science. The kind of movie, the sci-fi, science fiction that he does. Can you imagine the amount of studies that he's doing, or his team does to execute that sort of thing, right? So the point is, you can be in any career, but I'm sure his own education, whatever he's done, is also contributing some way to whatever he does, right? The point is, whatever education or program that we are in, it always has something to offer to us. The question is, how much do we take out of it? So for those kids or for those students who have this mindset that, you know what, this is not exactly what want to learn.
mm,
Okay, I give me time, I'll do something else on the side. Okay, for them it also is an impetus, like you earn it, because through this you still have to
true.
study in the code that is there. But you know what, if you ace this, you will get more time to do what you wish, right? So there are two things happening. One, you are acing the code, that's fine, but also you're learning something at least from this course,
Yeah,
and you also have the freedom to do more of what you want to do. Okay,
exactly.
so this is what I think, and maybe people who watch this can put in their comments, or we can draw on this. But yeah, that's it from my side. Any parting comments from me?
I think that's about making the best of the situation, um, getting benefit from what you're doing, and also orientation towards what you want to do. Somewhere that should hit a sweet spot. Uh, Maybe if, when people comment on these talks that we have, they could make suggestions, and then we, since we are in the system, we could try and implement and give feedback and see about how things work out.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. Great, great. So,
Excellent.
just I think so. We'll be back again with another podcast, right? I think it might be on 5G, the revolution, 5G revolution, which will shoot soon.
Great. Looking forward to that.